Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom documentation and processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Ryan Redding from DP Marketing Services. And Ryan, very happy to have you here.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for the invite.
You are very welcome. And Ryan is the founder, as I said, of DP Marketing, which specializes in marketing systems and marketing strategies and doing everything marketing for the HVAC and plumbing arena. And the reason why I'm so excited to have you here, Ryan, because I love creating processes and procedures for HVAC companies. We work with many of them, also plumbing. And I love creating processes for those industries because they use it and then they grow. And I'm excited to have you to talk here about the marketing aspect of it. What do you do in terms of marketing for those industries, and also your systems? You're very big on systems, and we can talk systems all day long. I know we talked before the interview. So we're going to talk also about how you systematize your own business and made it successful because you implemented systems. And to our listeners, even if you're not in the HVAC or plumbing area, it's totally okay. You can learn a lot from this conversation in terms of systematizing your business and in terms of doing marketing. So Ryan, first of all, tell us a little bit more about your company, about yourself. How did you get started?
Yeah, so we're a full service digital agency. And by that, I mean, we do everything from websites to SEO to PPC to reputation management. I tell people if it's a digital something, we probably touch it. And so it's interesting because my evolution into marketing, I studied marketing in schools and undergrad. My first job out of college was at a huge ad agency in St. Louis. And I had this massive account and really quickly had to unlearn everything you learned in school, doing marketing, because it went from theoretical to Fortune 500 company scale. So it was just very different approach.
I can totally relate to it. That's what happens to me when my first day on the job as an engineer, same thing happened.
It's throw it all out. I'm grateful for the time working on the stuff in undergrad, but when you get punched in the mouth with a $1 billion ad campaign, it's a lot to take in. So you kind of have to hit the ground running. Learned a lot, and over time did more a mass media, things like that, TV, billboard, radio, things along those lines, and then got into direct mail at one point. Sold that business in 2008 and kind of walked away from marketing for a while until maybe about 10 years ago, maybe just shy of 10 years ago, where for us, it was interesting because there's this need to just help Main Street small businesses. So we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is not a massive town by any means, but there's these awesome main streets with bakers and chiropractors and just good mom and pop businesses, and they all had really crappy websites, just all of them. And so early on, it was just let's just find a way to help these people have a website that doesn't suck. One of the guys we picked up in this time was a plumber. There was nothing special about him. He was just another baker, chiropractor, whatever. But his business was it just turned upside down. He went from just a guy working out of a shop to right now he's a Nexstar company. I think he's got 16 or 18 trucks on the road. He spends his time golfing because of scaling the business, putting systems in place and growing. So he was the first one to say, bro, you need to just do plumbing and HVAC, guys, because we know we need the phone to ring. We don't know how to do it. And you know what you're doing. So yeah, it's funny, entirely by accident, landed back doing marketing again. entirely by accident, fell in love with like the contractor space. It's been quite a journey.
That's great. Great story. So what is so unique about the contractor space in terms of even specifically in terms of the HVAC and plumbing industries?
Yeah. So I think there's two big things that are interesting for us. One is about the actual contractor themselves. So these tend to be salt of the earth, like good men and women. They are really, really good at their trade. We've got guys who have like all these credentials and all these licenses and like national recognition on something like energy management, right? They're just very, very good at what they do. They don't love managing a business. Right. They don't love thinking about things like building a team culture or establishing marketing processes. They just don't love that. Their thing is they nerd out on the technology in their trade. If that's turning a wrench or if that's jetting a line or whatever, they are very, very skilled in that. So that's kind of been appealing for us. So these are guys who are very, very good at their trade. And they're comfortable saying what they don't know. It's very endearing for us. The other part is for their customers. So not our customers, not the contractors, but the contractors' customers. Because if we're honest, nobody thinks about an HVAC contractor when it's spring or fall and the weather's perfect. Nobody cares. It's only when it's in the middle of summer and it's 100 degrees in their house and stuff's not cooling off that they go, who the crap is going to come fix this stuff? It's very urgency driven. It's very bottom of the conversion funnel. So for us, it's interesting to understand the customer mindset when they have a problem. And kind of everything that we do is focusing on capturing that customer, where they're looking, how they're behaving, how they're feeling when they have a problem, to direct them to the clients we work with. So for us, talking about processes, that's what makes it scalable, is because we're not having to relearn customer acquisition processes for every potential industry under the sun. It's just, no, we know the customers when they need an HVAC guy. They're pissed off. They're afraid they're going to get ripped off. They really didn't want to have to call you to begin with. And we've got to convert them into a happy customer pretty quickly. So it's been a fun journey. I think those are the two big reasons that we really love the space.
Love it. And that's definitely in terms of having a system or having a process. It's really important that if you already have that learning curve and you already learned it, so then utilize it to the max, because that will create a really good system. And, in that arena, in terms of, you touched upon it, the seasonality, right? Because that's even if you're not an HVAC contractor, but you have a business that have some kind of a seasonality, it's how to make it so it's not seasonal, how to make it so it is actually going all year long. And that is also understanding the customer, the thought process. I can tell you for myself, because I had that incident of, the air conditioning start dripping at a 90 something. I'm in Oregon, and here like 90 or 95 degrees, it's a hot day, right? Or sometimes we get to 100, but even, I think it was a 95-degree day, and the air conditioner start leaking, and in the living room, which was not necessarily what we wanted. So then when I look at air conditioning now, I look at the unit before in the spring, I go, okay, I do need maintenance. And of course, I'm also on a maintenance program now, because I do think it works, because then I don't have to think about it, and I don't have to experience again what happens in terms of the air conditioning start leaking and trying to find an HVAC contractor to come in the middle of that hot day when they get so many calls. And I know that from the other side, from working with clients on that, right? So how do you basically overcome the seasonality of your business is also part of a process the businesses should have. So with HVAC contractors, it's the maintenance program, right? I mean, we come and look at your equipment twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. And that also gives the opportunity for the contractor to look at the equipment and recommend any change, any new installs or any retrofit that is needed in order to make sure that the customer is being serviced. So that can be part of the marketing, right?
Yeah, totally. And actually, to take that a step further, I think that's why we are such big proponents of like flat rate pricing. And I'm always shocked when I see people still on T&M, because flat rate pricing at its core, it's about establishing cash flow during busy season. Busy season is going to happen, right? So let's not get surprised when it does. But it's about generating cash flow to carry you through shoulder season, so that when you guys are running maintenance calls and they're less profitable, you have cash in the tank. It's designed to give you that gas to go further. And so for us, like flat rate, it's essential. It's essential to give you the cash you need to scale and to grow, to maintain that pace during shoulder. And also, we have guys who get really clever at their marketing in shoulder season. We have one company we work with in Pennsylvania where every spring and every fall, they load up all of their service vans with flowers, and they adopt like a city park. And they have all their guys in uniforms take a work day. They are paid for their time, and they go in the city parks in uniforms and plant flowers. It's a big spectacle, and the community shows up, local press shows up because it's got warm fuzzies about it. And it's just a really easy way to generate good vibes, positive press that pays off when it does get busy season again.
I love it. That's a great idea. Any other marketing ideas, like any other systems that you help clients implement in terms of marketing that you've seen that work really well?
Yeah, so what's interesting for us, our default is systematizing. We try to make it where there's a structure and a process in place. And really what that lets us do, and the clients we work with, is then focus on the exceptions to those things, right? And it's a lot of ways, if you think about it, like budgeting, because budgeting is I think in some ways it's easier for people to process. If you understand your KPIs of where you should be as a percentage on your COGS, your job costs, however you call it, and then maybe your overhead expense. If you know, hey, I spend this much on labor, I spend this much on payroll, I spend this much on tax, blah, blah, blah. And you have this within a range of normal. And, for those not watching, that's air quotes. Once things exceed those ranges, then you should pay attention to it, right? If all of a sudden your job costs go way up, but your overhead didn't change, and so your net profit went small, you need to look into that thing, because that's now the exception to the rule. So it's easy when you have that sort of structure in place where you're not having to manage every little detail day after day and week after week. It gives you the freedom to focus deeper on the things that are the exceptions, so you can make more immediate decisions that have a more immediate impact versus reinventing the wheel every week or every month or every fall. So yeah, I think at our core, systematizing what we can is crucial, because then that lets us, like from a marketing perspective, it lets us focus on things like planting flowers, right?
Right.
It's the exception.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. And then having a good marketing program in place, right? A plan on what you're going to do. And as you said, have the KPIs and make sure that you're actually measuring it, and you know what works and what doesn't work. And you have that marketing dollars invested in things that work. If direct mail works for you, if, the PPC, the SEO, the whatever works for you, when you're working with an expert, like when they're working with you, Ryan, you are going to direct them into, not directly with you, with your team, you have a big team, but with you as you and your team. So basically they're going to be able to evaluate what works and what doesn't work. And according to that, plan ahead, just like what you said, which I think it's extremely important for businesses to have, as opposed to just throw money here and there on marketing and it's disjointed and there is not a big plan on what they're going to be doing. So definitely. Yes.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. And I get, look, I'm in a lot of the same Facebook groups that probably a lot of the guys listening to this and watching this right now are in. I know how consistently people are talking for where to get more leads, how to get more leads, how to get more, it's very immediate. It's very transactional of, I just need more things coming in to keep my guys busy. The guys who really set themselves apart are the ones who think bigger. They're not thinking about winning a battle. They're thinking about winning a war. And it's just the way that they think about growing and scaling their business is fundamentally different than I want lead from here and lead from here and lead from here. They're really, really insightful, really meaningful. And the KPIs, I mean, testify to that too. They're just at a different standard.
Right. So the KPIs are the key performance indicators. So it's basically those are the numbers or the statistics that we keep in order to see how a certain system or how a certain process or certain actions are performing, right? So for instance, a KPI, give me an example of a KPI that you like to use with an HVAC company.
Yeah. So one of the big ones we like to use on the starting is cost of acquisition, COA. So for those who are unfamiliar, cost of acquisition crudely is total dollars spent on marketing over a period divided by number of new customers acquired during that same period. So here's the things to keep in mind. One, that's marketing across all channels. That's not just select, right? To get an average cost of acquisition, you need to go all. But you also need to do new customers. Repeat customers don't count in this math, and a lot of guys screw that up. The idea, obviously, is to get as many possible new customers as you can at the lowest possible cost, right? And then, to be fair, that's an aggregate, to your point. And at some point, you need to break that down to say, okay, what can we get from Billboard? What can we get from TV? What do we get from AdWords? What do we get from Facebook? And some will be better than others. It doesn't mean that it's broken. If it's less efficient, billboards are going to be not super efficient, right? There's no KPI standard that's going to go, we paid 20 grand a month for billboards and all these people called us from the billboard. That just likely won't happen. However,
but the billboard is more like a recognition, right? Like a name recognition.
It totally is.
Yeah.
It's just I guess the point of that one is you have to make sure you're using the right KPI to measure the right thing.
That's exactly right.
Because if you're trying to do cost of acquisition on a billboard, it's going to look broken. And it's not. I'm a huge fan of billboard. I'm a huge fan of radio, but you just have to make sure you're measuring it correctly because it's different. It's a different point of the customer journey.
Absolutely. And that's where really working with an expert like you to really understand what each tool can bring and not just get rid of tools because we think there is no direct correlation, because there are different tools in marketing and each one has its purpose, so definitely like a billboard with the name recognition. So next time they have a plumbing problem, but they saw your ad, they are recognized, they will Google it, but there will be three people that will come, three companies will be first, and then they will recognize your name because they saw the billboard. So it's the connected dot, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that makes total sense. So I know you're a big fan of systems. So tell me from your perspective, why do you think businesses need systems and processes in place? And I know you have a good story. I mean, it's a sad story, but you just told me the story before we started that exemplifies the need of systems.
Yeah. And so I'll be honest, I think when most people hear the word systems, it either sounds really intimidating or really overwhelming. It either sounds super sophisticated, I don't know how to do it, or it's like a luxury thing that only the massive companies really need to think about. But real story, this is about a month ago at this point, but there's a company we work with, they're an HVAC contractor in South Texas, and they were ran by a husband and wife team. The husband was killed in a freak boating accident. No one saw it coming. It literally, it was obviously a tragic incident, but the husband, because of his technical aptitude, like going back to, he knows his trade. He was kind of like the expert, not only in the business, but also in the industry in his particular field. His wife didn't understand the business. So when he passed, not only now is the wife having to learn, how do I take care of the funeral arrangements and all this planning and all these kind of end of life things that no one wants to think about, right? No one wants to. But now she's also thrown in the deep end of how do they do payroll and how often and what are their payment terms with suppliers and how do they do tech support for the guys in the field and everything you think about running the business, right? Back office, front office, everything. She had to learn and is continuing to learn. And so it took a tragic situation where the family was needing to grieve, should have been present with the family to just grieve and celebrate his life, to now this huge other complication of having to provide for the teams who have relied on this business for years to provide for their families, to provide for their suppliers, their customers who really don't know. And a lot of them, not to sound insensitive, a lot of customers don't necessarily care about any sort of incidents. People get really myopic and really short-sighted and like, it's hot in my house, so you come out now. Like, what is this event that's detached from their world? And it's sad to say, it's just a lot of people don't think that way. Having systems in place, if this business would have had well-thought systems for everything, for how they answered the phone, to how they dispatch, for how they did payroll, if it was codified, written down, repeatable, people were trained on it, if they had a deep bench that they could call up and say, hey, so-and-so sick today, we need you to step up and fill this role. If those things were in place, that business could have gone on through that event, still tragedy, right? Still grieving, still having all the emotional experience that humans have. But the business would have been able to continue to function. It would have been a self-functioning machine. And that, to me, I know it is sad, but that is literally the most obvious reason of systematizing as much as you possibly can. For those looking for an exit strategy, the other side benefit is it drastically and dramatically improves the multiplier you can ask for when somebody's looking to acquire your business.
Absolutely. That's
right?
True. It's definitely a sad story, and unfortunate, but it happens, so that is one of the reasons to have the systems in case you have some kind of a departure. Even a departure of a key employee doesn't have to be a tragic story. It can be that
sure.
The key employee is retiring, or that you want to exit the business. That's absolutely correct. And then also, to your point, in order that we discussed earlier, so we also have the growing and scaling, and that can only happen if you have the systems in place, you document them, so then if you're introducing a change, what that change, how does it affect your business, right? So if you're doing a new marketing campaign, then you can see what is the effect that it has on the business. And if it's a good effect, and now you're getting all these leads, now you need to basically multiply the number of estimators that you have. And in order to do that, you have to be able to train them fast, as opposed to now thinking, oh, now I have to add another estimator. It'll be another 6 months until I get them trained, as opposed to running them through a system of training.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to someone on our team the other day. She went through a midlife crisis about 10 years ago, where she was disgruntled with corporate America and decided she wanted to work at Starbucks, like as a 45-year-old woman, and just went to Starbucks. And the thing that struck her was, it doesn't matter where you live in the US, any Starbucks you go to is going to prepare a caramel macchiato exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. And it's much more than like the same ingredients, right? It goes beyond into how do you hold the cup, at what angle, how long do you work the milk, it's literally step-by-step, very, very detailed.
Absolutely. And the way they ask, it's like you walk into one Starbucks, you don't know where you're at, unless you look outside, it's
right.
It's kind of like it looks, you can be, that Starbucks can be, I remember walking into a Starbucks in Spain, and I was like, oh, where am I? Am I in New York? Am I in Portland? It's kind of like, it's the same. It's a similar experience. And that is the uniformity of the systems. But, there is also the personality. So of course, I knew they were in Spain because they spoke Spanish, and they, they look like they're in Spain, and you had still that flair and that ambience, or whatever you want to call it. So it was different, but there was the similarities of being, this is a Starbucks here, a Starbucks there, but then the personality of the person and the culture and the race and the customs make it so it is different. So I don't want to give the impression that now, because we have systems, we do not have the human element, or we do not have the creativity, but that actually gives way to have more creativity and more of yourself when you actually have those systems in place.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And that's an interesting example though, because the extreme is so dramatic, where cultural norms come into play, right? Of how the culture actually seeps through the structures and the systems that are kind of layered in. But when you get your beverage, the beverage is going to look and taste exactly like you think it should look and taste.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Ryan, it's a good point, because sometimes, I work with creative agencies. I work at clients that were their own marketing agencies, and I help them document the procedures. And I hear, especially from the creative side of, we don't need processes because that is going to stop our creativity, or processes are for corporate America or for people that are very scientific, but not for creative people. Like, what are your thoughts on that comment?
So I am such a weird guy to ask this too, because when I was an undergrad, I had a double major. So one was music, very artsy, creative, and one was marketing, which is right in the middle of the business school. In the music program, I was the only one who showed up on time. My crap was done. My work was delivered fine. I was a very type A in a type B sort of program, right? Everyone else is super creative, like just show up, do whatever you want whenever. And I was like very structured, very regimented. In the business school, I was the opposite. Everyone was, it's got to fit in a spreadsheet. It's got to fit in a spreadsheet. And I was the only one saying, a spreadsheet doesn't always work. Like, there's room to paint outside of these lines sometimes. And I've never really fit in both worlds really well, like from either the really quantitative side or either the very creative side. I've always been kind of a misfit. For me, I tend to find creatives in general thrive really well within confines. That when left to unlimited horizons and do whatever you want, there's no restrictions, the creativity is not channeled, like it doesn't build onto something. It's only when you have really strict parameters, and they could be processes parameters, they could be resource parameters, but whatever those confines are, that's what tends to channel the most positive impact that creatives have. So for us, like SEO, for instance, it's something that we actually love. We find very, very good ROI for it. We try as much as possible to have very, very structured processes for SEO to the point where it's almost clerical. Like there's not a lot of creativity. And then we try to let the creatives do other things. So they're not having to spin their wheels about what sort of this could we do? It's like, nope, SEO's done. Like, it's off the table. So that's like a parameter that's like, don't think about that. What else can we do to leverage that creative energy to move things forward? So
that's great. That's a great answer. It's having that confinement or strict. We can even find words that are a little bit more like, basically boundaries or knowledge of what is expected, right? And then have that creativity work within those boundaries or limits or the knowledge of what is expected. So that really is it's a great advice. And I say the same, I experience the same. When you have like a system that is very predictable, then you can have the time to invest in making it better or making it more creative, as opposed to investing the time on figuring out how to do it. So an example would be like making coffee. So we all have a system when we wake up in the morning for making tea or making coffee or whatever you're doing in the morning, right? But think about it. If you did not have the system down on how to make coffee, then every morning you will have to figure it out. So it'll take you 30 minutes to learn it or figure out how to work the coffee grinder or how to boil water. Well, how do I turn on the stove? It's like you have to figure it out. It will take you probably 30 minutes just to get through it, right? And then you run out of time and then you have to go do something else, as opposed to if you know the system is there, but now you can spend a few minutes figuring out how to make a better coffee or how to froth the milk better or how to, what else can I put in my tea so it's more interesting. I know it's kind of like a silly example, but it's like you have the system done. The point is that you have a system that you don't have to think about. Right. And that's the framework. And then you can be creative on top of that framework in order to create a better product. And that's what we are going for.
Yeah, I think so. As much as I agree with that, I think the inverse of this problem is also true, where people who are not creative and who do not have a creative bone in their body, and I'm not knocking those, right? Those people are needed and valuable. Sometimes they don't understand the creative process that is necessary. So like the weird metaphor that I use a lot is, imagine if a big guy from New York City, a wealthy businessman, acquires a dairy farm. He probably acquires this dairy farm thinking these cows are just going to make milk all day long. These cows are making milk, because when they make the milk, then he makes the money, right? That's going to be this really shrewd businessman's mindset. If he were to visit the dairy farm, he would probably be really surprised that the cows spend their time eating grass, right? They need to walk around on the field, eat the grass, take their time in the sun, because only then can they produce the milk. So this like creative cycle that requires ideation and kind of trial and error and kind of percolating these ideas, it's hard for people who are not creative to correlate that with making milk, right? And
Absolutely.
the milk is where you make the money. So I think both sides need to kind of have this like overlap where creatives need to know structure is good for you. And also people who are very, very quantitative, like our operations guy, he has to appreciate the fact that creatives need some margin. Like they need to be able to paint outside the box a little bit, because that's when they do their best work.
I agree. I mean, it has to be a combination of both. And, and I tell these stories like, my background is industrial engineering. And the reason why I studied industrial engineering is when I looked at the, basically the explanation of what industrial engineering is, when I decided I had to declare my major, I thought, this is a combination of science and understanding like what makes people tick and why do they behave a certain way, and really understanding people. And I thought that was a great combination of processes and people. It's not just processes, otherwise we'll be robots, and we are not. And it's not just the people side. I mean, obviously the people side is very important, but it's not just people doing whatever they want, because then we're going to have no organization. So the beauty of an organization is that combination of people and processes. And I'm sure you tell your clients that, I tell my clients that it has to be a combination. You cannot go down this path of documenting every single thing and making sure that everybody looks at the documentation all the time. It doesn't work. That's why you have to have that combination of enough systems with enough freedom to actually create and do whatever and basically be creative in whatever sphere. It doesn't have to be just in the marketing sphere and the creative. Everything is creative. HVAC have to be creative, right? I mean, I know that when they installed the unit here in my home, they had to be creative on how to get something going, because it wasn't like their standard thing. So that demanded creativity. It wasn't part of a process. The process was install the air conditioning or install the unit. And then, of course, at the end, make sure that it works and give the manuals and do all the tests. That's the system. But figure it out how to go around a wall when they couldn't, or what do they have to do. That necessitated the creativity of the person.
Yeah. And when possible, those creatives have an opportunity to raise the bar in the systems.
It's true.
Right? So when you find a new best practice, when you find something that customers especially engage positively with, figure out how to make it where it's repeatable by more than just Rockstar Johnny, who you kind of lean on all the time, right? How do you develop more Rockstar Johnnies so that your whole team has the benefit of one person's creativity or one person's strength? So it's not just reducing Rockstar Johnny to be average, right? Let Rockstar Johnny bring up everyone else too.
Absolutely. And you and I talked before the show here about the weakest link. You are as whatever you want to say, as secure, as successful, as whatever as your weakest link. So you have to elevate that weakest link to a different level, and you do it by, we call it cloning. You say the superstar Johnny is basically cloning the superstar Johnny, so others can do it as well. And again, that is being done by processes. So Ryan, I mean, we can talk processes all day long, I think. We definitely understand that, you understand that, and hopefully we help our listeners understand that a little bit better. So if they want to reach you and ask you more questions or find out more about your services, because you definitely have clients nationwide and you specialize in the HVAC and plumbing spaces, and I've seen your work, I've seen what you do, and it's absolutely incredible. And no doubt that you can bring a lot of business to any business that you work with. So how can they find out more about your company? What's the best way to reach you?
So you can find us online at dpmarketing.services. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. We've got a pretty active YouTube channel. Just do the same search, you'll see us. I also have a book on Amazon if anyone likes to read. I joke with people like I wrote the book on digital marketing for plumbing and HVAC contractors because the book is literally called The Book on Digital Marketing for Plumbing and HVAC Contractors. So people can find us on Amazon, find us online at dpmarketing.services. And yeah, would love to be able to talk to people, maybe even run into them at a conference or something as they're coming back online.
Great. Well, we're going to include the link to the book and to the website on the notes for the podcast. But in case you are listening right now and you would like to check right away the work that Ryan and his team do, which is really, really it's great. I mean, you can go there and you can see some examples of websites and you can see what they do. So again, it's DP, and DP stands for Digital Plumber. So dpmarketing.services. So go check it out for sure. And I also would like to give a big shout out to Jeremy Wise from Rise 25, because he's the one who introduced us.
Oh yeah. Way to go, Jeremy.
That's right. So thank you, Jeremy, for the introduction. Jeremy is amazing. If you don't know about Rise 25, definitely check their website. They're also a marketing agency, but they specialize in podcasts and content and basically helping people create their own podcasts, just like they're helping me. And that's why we have this podcast today. So check it out, rise25.com. And Ryan, thank you again for being a guest here. Such amazing, valuable information. And very happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This was a ton of fun.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.